Are you a brewhead? I'm a brewhead. Are you a brewhead? I'm a brewhead. Y'all are brewheads? Yeah, we brewheads. So pour a glass of craft beer, we can do this. Yeah.
What's good, y'all? This is Cee, Certified Brewhead, and welcome to episode 113 of Beer and Other Adjunct series. 13 is my favorite number, so I'm stoked for this episode. But before we get into it, you already know, guys, this episode of BAOS is sponsored by Manscaped. Ready for this ad read? It's always a good time. It's never too early to play holiday music, and it's never too early to start thinking about gifts. Whether it's for a friend or friends in your pants, you can make this a season to be jolly with Manscaped. Do your little drummer boy a favor and use the Lawnmower 4.0 that I conveniently have right here. Boom! To avoid another silent night in the bedroom. That's funny. Then add in Manscaped's top-of-the-line shower products to have the people thinking, all I want for Christmas is you. Santa cares about his sack, and so should you. Look nice when you get naughty by going to manscaped.com and use code BAOS for free shipping and 20% off. So, man, this shit is fire. I actually haven't tried these new ones yet because I need them for the video, but I've been using their product for about a year, and it's killer. See, Manscaped Platinum Package 4.0, which is what I've been using, is the one-stop shop for the man who deserves it all. It has everything you need to help you deck the halls from face to balls, just in time for the mistletoe season. The Platinum Package has each product from the best-selling Performance Package plus Ultra Premium Body Wash, which I have here, Ultra Premium 2-in-1 Shampoo and Conditioner, and Ultra Premium Deodorant so you don't stink. I always lose my spot because I'm holding them up to the camera. It's the best way to smell fresh from your Santa hat to your candy cane. The Lawnmower 4.0 Body Trimmer and the Weed Whacker Nose and Ear and Hair Trimmer, which I also use regularly. I hate nose hair and ear hair. It's fucking gross. Feature proprietary advanced skin-safe technology to protect your delicate presence. Plus, both are waterproof, so there's no issue clearing the snow out of your driveway. There's also a 4000K LED light on it, so you can... Hang on. That's this side. So you can light the way like Rudolph. Now that you've groomed now that you've groomed your candy cane, it's time to make sure you don't smell like a reindeer with the Platinum Package shower products, which are these bad boys. All of Manscaped's shower gear is sulfate-free, vegan, and made to have your skin feeling hydrated and smelling fresh. But smelling good doesn't stop in the shower. The Crop Preserver Ball Deodorant and Crop Reviver Ball Toner can solve stank problems all day long. Once they touch your sack, you'll never go back, and I can verify that. The Platinum Package 4.0 sitting under the tree is guaranteed to put anyone in the holiday spirit. And for the perfect stocking stuffer, add in the brand new Body Buffer. Boom. An incredible body scrubber that makes exfoliating easy and a lot cleaner than the old loofah. So, get 20% off and free shipping with code BAOS at manscaped.com. It's on the screen. That's 20% off with free shipping at manscaped.com. Use the code BAOS, you know. Manscaped, get your jingle balls ready for the holidays. So, this episode is something that we've been planning for quite some time. I'm excited to get into it. With no further ado, guys, please welcome your favorite and mine, Nathan from NathanDoesBeer in the motherfucking building.
Hey, good to see you, man.
Likewise, brother. The Lord has returned. I'm excited for this one, dude.
So am I.
I don't know if we ever publicly talked about doing this, did we? I think we just had it. We're just planning it out, mapping it out for the last maybe 2 months or something.
I think we actually teased it on the Anderson episode.
We did. Smart boys of us. So the episode we did, I can't remember. It was maybe episode 111 or 109. It was around that time. We did an episode on Oktoberfest beers. So we talked about all things fall, pumpkin beers, Marzens, fest beers, all that type of stuff. And we really enjoyed that, and it made sense to us to do similar types of episodes where we focus on one style or one kind of topic where we just shoot the shit, you know, and really do a deep dive. So tonight, this is the style we're focusing on tonight is something that's become one of our... We've been texting about this, you know, late night, like, yo, man, this shit, like, this is... I think I'd rather this more than anything. Like, I feel like we're both on the same page with this style. Yep. Am I accurate there?
Yeah, absolutely you are.
Would you like to tell the good folks what that style might be?
Yep, I think we've teased it long enough now. What we're talking about is West Coast IPAs.
West Coast. I'm moist.
Yes.
Are you? I feel moisture coming.
Yeah, I'm excited. Yeah, like you say, we've been talking about this for a little while, especially when it comes to one brewery in particular, which we'll get to in a little bit, who
Yes.
who locally make some of the best West Coast IPAs around, and and some good variation of it, but we'll get into more detail for them in a second. Anyways, the point is, we've been going wild for West Coast IPAs for a while. Like you and I both being fairly big haze heads for quite a while. It's just kind of getting tired of them a little bit and starting to find that there's fewer and farther between that are like really knocking our socks off. Would that be fair to say?
Generally speaking, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Not to not to disparage the style as a whole, or even breweries that that focus on it. Because, for instance, Badlands is still bomb absolutely every time.
Every time.
Third Moon still knocking it out of the park.
Every time.
Places like Barn Cat, Willibald, all making some fire. But outside of those handful of ones that really specialize in the style, it's a lot of them can really be kind of either either just kind of hopped to the extreme where there's not really anything else to support it, or it's kind of been replaced, as opposed to what a New England IPA is meant to be. It's kind of this hazy IPA, this kind of new catch-all term, has has kind of taken its place, where the flavors are a little more mellow, and the palate is also a little bit more mellow as well. It's kind of taken everything down a notch. Anyway, all this to say, the style as a whole has started to get a little bit boring as a whole, and really oversaturated, and kind of overdone. All this to say, as we've kind of started to get tired with a lot of them, what we're kind of rediscovering our love for, and what we're reaching for way more often as just kind of like a beer to enjoy when we're not work, so to speak, beers, when we're making content or anything. I'm finding I'm reaching for West Coast IPAs way more often these days.
Yes, definitely. And, I definitely drink haze every drinking session possible. I'm always drinking haze. The ones that you mentioned are the ones that consistently do it. So they're the ones that I try to keep in the fridge as often as I possibly can. Though I think, and I was going to ask you, do you, there's something that's kind of pushed us towards West Coast. Do you, and it's what you said, as far as maybe palate fatigue, maybe a little bit, with just the influx of haze and how much we chased it for years and years. Well, 5 years, 6 years, something like that. And West Coast was reintroduced in the last, 2 years, year and a half, maybe. And I think it was a slow burn. It wasn't like all of a sudden West Coast are back and we're both losing our minds. I think it was not completely a pendulum swing, but just more like maybe it's moving away from the haze just a little bit back towards something different. And West Coast really hit the mark, and it happened to be that there are a bunch of spectacular offerings, as you suggested earlier, from both provinces, Quebec and Ontario, that are pretty easily accessible to both of us.
There are, yeah, and even even still, in ones that have been regularly available for a long time, that we're just kind of rediscovering our love for, and and just kind of remembering that these are here regularly available. They're not even one-off releases. You can literally get any time of the year, which is a pretty great place to be when kind of you're moving back in that direction.
That's a great point. I don't recall very many one-off West Coast. It's typically either a year-rounder or a regular rotation where it comes back 2, 3, 4 times a year. So it's a beautiful thing. So let's crack the first beer, and we'll talk about... Yes.
Yeah, before we crack the first beer, we should mention something that has nothing to do with with West Coast IPAs. We should talk about these shirts that we're wearing here.
Yes.
This is the Team Lactose uniform that came 3 years too late.
Maybe 4.
Yeah,
Yeah.
maybe even 4. This is like Team Lactose is something that neither of us even talk about anymore.
No, we don't care.
Like I'm pretty sure the Twitter account has had our Halloween artwork on it literally for
like
a year and
year.
a half straight now. Like this, just to give you an idea of how active Team Lactose is these days. But I randomly found these T-shirts, and for people who are listening as opposed to watching, it's mimicking or parodying a Lacoste shirt with with the alligator on it, except it had it's also got like a cow's face on it, and says lactose as opposed to Lacoste. And it's pretty funny, and it's merch from from Cow's Ice Cream, which I think is an ice cream shop primarily in PEI, but they also I think they also have locations elsewhere. But they've got some pretty hilarious merch, including these shirts. And as soon as I saw them, even though Team Lactose isn't even really a thing, I just had to have them. So I got us outfitted with Team Lactose gear way too late.
Do you know what? It's better late than never, and thank you again. It was the early Christmas gift. You are a sweetheart and a gem and a wonderful human being, and I think they look great. I've got, for once again, those who are listening instead of watching, I got the white one. Nate has the black one, so we're standing out tonight. I insisted that we wear them because I told you, and you were like, "Well, it's got nothing to do with West Coast." I'm like, "Exactly, doesn't matter." You have to let people know this is our shit. This is what we represent, and we had to put it, front and center. Why don't we, putting it out there, don't change the handle, because Team Lactose is a pretty funny account, but maybe we turn it into a West Coast fanboy account, ironically almost, that, not ironically about how we feel about West Coast, but the fact that it's on a Lactose account. That could be something. Think about it.
Yeah, that makes it, that does make it all like all the more funny. We'll talk about it.
We'll talk, because we do dumb shit with that account, and we considered almost getting rid of it. Then we're like, let's just hang on to it and see. It's not like it's got a ton of followers, but
it might have a use for it someday. Maybe
exactly.
This is the time.
Bit of a renaissance for that 150 odd or whatever it is, dedicated Twitter followers on there.
Yep. So
with that, we curated 4 beers tonight, 4 West Coast IPAs, 2 from Ontario and 2 from Quebec. I'm super excited. Let's show the camera the first one. Let's just get this one going.
Yep.
So we're kicking it off with Anderson's IPA. It's just called IPA, but it is a West Coast style. This one is 6.2%. If you watched Nate and I's recent episode, I believe maybe that was 111. I
think it was.
It was, right? So maybe our other one was 109. With Gavin Gavin Anderson from Anderson Craft Ales. And we were losing our shit. And the best part about that is that Gavin very generously sent us 6-pack of this particular beer. At first, typically I don't need 6 of anything. But after we had it on that podcast, it's taken all of my willpower not to drink this beer beforehand. Or not to drink all 6 of them before this podcast. Because as soon as we had it, we were both like, oh, this is going on the West Coast pod.
Oh yeah. Like we decided during the recording because it was just it was just too good.
It's genuinely spectacular. I love the format in the short can. It's only 6.2. Oh, look at the way it just bubbles up. The head is glorious. The nose big.
And like just look at that gorgeous color. It's like you can see right through it. It's like a gorgeous copper orange.
Yes.
And the aroma, my goodness,
it's insane. I also want to shout out Go on.
No, I was the aroma is just wild. Like you get pine, you get kind of like that sticky dank, thing going on. Like caramelized grapefruit. Yep. All of those, all of those elements that you want in a West Coast, really, you get it on smell alone.
Yeah, 100%. I like that caramelized grapefruit. That's dope, man. What a great way to describe that.
Yeah.
Very citrusy. You get a little dank resin on there, but it's not overwhelming. Nate, I need to put this in me, mate.
Yeah, let's do it.
Cheers, brother. Spectacular. This I'm just doing a bit of post, making sure I'm doing that live on Instagram as well, getting some shots. But do we know the hops on this particular beer? Like, is it? I don't think it's on Untapped, because he did
No,
tell
it's
us on the
not, and
pod.
I don't and I don't know them because it doesn't say on the can, and I was looking on the website before, but it
Untapped
does
doesn't
not say
say
the
either.
hops on this one. I know the hops on the other ones that we're having tonight, but this was the only one that I couldn't find.
Did you just Google it in general? Because I can Google it really quickly.
Like the ones for this for this beer, you mean?
Yeah, this beer specifically. Like sometimes Beer Advocate or something will turn up, and they end up talking about it. That's what I usually do if they don't put it on Untapped. And also breweries, please put, even if you don't really care, put the description on Untapped and put the hops in there, and if you like the malts or something. I find it really helpful, like in circumstances like this. So I'm writing my reviews on almost every beer I drink, so I just want to know what's in it, and I just feel like it's a real simple way. And the good thing about that is Untapped has incredible SEO. Like the very first link on Google after their own website is Untapped. So please do that. I know a lot of people don't, or they couldn't be bothered, or whatever it might be. But which I understand, but if you've already got it and you can just kind of like copy paste, that would be amazing. So I found a Beer Advocate thing, and I've kind of got no one's really saying that, so I'm not too sure why they don't say. But do you have any guesses?
I do have some I do have some guesses, just kind of going off of commonly used hops in in West Coast IPAs. Like Simcoe wouldn't surprise me. Like Cascade or
Cascade for
Chinook
sure.
wouldn't surprise me. Centennial, like a lot of the C hops are they're like our common choices there.
Yeah, I'd almost be surprised if it's not almost exclusively C hops in this
Yep.
bad boy. It's yeah, I think I'm not going to waste my time checking too much then. But yeah, man, it's just so easy. Like the thing about, and we're going to get into like what is a West Coast IPA, what makes it what it is. It's it's what IPAs kind of used to be, or kind of almost were for the time that they've really been around in the last maybe 30 years or so, give or take. And I feel like this is like such an approach. When people always say, "Oh, I don't like IPAs; they're bitter." This is what they're talking about. This is a style.
Yep.
And this is something that, like, I think a lot of people could get behind. It might be too bitter for some, and I do recall minimal bitterness being very noticeable, when you're maybe a bit new to beer. But
Yep.
this has got to be one of the most crushable, approachable West Coast IPAs I've potentially ever had.
Yeah. No, it is like it is absolutely very approachable, but it's like definitely one of those things that if bitterness is something that puts you off in beer, or that did early on in your beer journey, I could see this potentially the like being a bit jarring. I mean, that's what really that's what really differentiated New England IPAs when they first came on the scene, was the really lowered bitterness in comparison to to American IPAs and in West Coast IPAs. So like even on the most approachable one, there is still going to be more bitterness in there for sure.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. Maybe what I should have said is that it might be a more approachable. If you're sort of a bit more familiar with bitterness in beer, maybe you're not completely a noob, because often it can be a lot for a newer palate to sort of take on. I feel like if you understand craft beer, you're a bit more comfortable with bitterness and stuff. This could be something that could actually be a gateway West Coast, arguably, because it's so crushable.
Sure.
Sweet,
and
citrusy.
I don't even think it necessarily has to do with with how much of a craft beer newbie or you are or whatnot. Like it's really just a personal palate thing. Like some people are just just affected by bitterness more than others. Like some people just that have a stronger reaction to bitterness in foods than other people do, no matter where you are in in kind of your beer your beer journey. So like even if you are new, but bitterness doesn't really affect you that much, then then West Coast IPAs might be your thing from the get go.
That's a very fair point, actually. No, I agree. I think it's one of those things. It's like I was about to say you either like it or you don't, but I think it's an acquired taste. I think West Coast IPAs are
Yeah.
an acquired taste, and typically, at least when we got into beer, you had to kind of work your way up to it, and that was there was no like going around that. Like that was just how it was done. You just kind of went through that color wheel of beers, and West Coast
and also. Yeah, and and also in the mid 2010s was the early to mid 2010s was also right around the time that West Coast IPAs were really going like rip your tongue off as bitter as possible kind of thing, like with the green flash stuff and like all of the palate wrecking joints, the 120 IBU the like things and and all that, like really making them as bitter as possible. Whereas in like 2018, it's how can we make this how can we make this as thick and opaque as possible. In the like from 2012 to 2015, it's like how can we rip your taste buds off kind of thing.
It's a very different approach, literally the opposite, which is probably why the popularity of New England IPAs has lasted and went so got so popular so fast, because it was a swing back from this, which not everyone liked. This was an extreme style of beer, arguably, particularly the palate wrecking ones, which wasn't all of them. Not all of them did, but I remember when like Mad Tom from Muskoka came out back in the day, like that shit used to tear my face off, and that was because it was probably one of the most bitter beers at the time, and that was like 2011 that came out, if I'm not mistaken. I think when I had Muskoka on the pod, that's what they told me. So. It's been an interesting journey for West Coast, and the fact it's coming back. The interesting thing about them coming back, and I guess we'll touch on this a bunch, is that I don't think they are. It's not swinging back to a palate wrecking West Coast. They're really approachable, balanced beers now that are just
absolutely.
Yeah, you've noticed that, right? Like they're very hoppy and they're resinous and dank, and they are bitter and they're sweet and they're citrusy. But they're not like ripping you up. Like they're not really trying to attack you. So it's like sort of like a more rounded version of what the beers used to be in comparison to the stuff that's coming out now, which I really love.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I'm not sure
it's
how
really, really good.
Would you even be interested in a palate wrecking IPA in 2022?
Oh, sure, I would.
Excuse me.
But it's just because I like to I like to try the whole range, and I'd be down to try it. It's definitely not something I would want to drink every day, but if someone who makes a good West Coast IPA is gonna put out one that clocks in at like 120 or 150 IBUs, of course I want to try it.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. I'd definitely try it. But I'm not like searching out the most hectic beers, and I don't think anyone is trying.
No, absolutely not. I'm not gonna be that dude at at the tap room that's gonna be like what's your what beer on the menu has the highest IPUs, but pour me that. Like I don't give a shit about that.
No one gives a shit about it. I've heard even that IBUs are kind of a bit of a bullshit marker. I've heard somewhere. Have you heard that before? That it's like not even. Accurate?
Yeah, I have heard that before, and it's not even something that like most breweries won't even talk about it anymore.
No,
it's
irrelevant.
It's not a marker that most brewers even care to care to measure or bother with.
Yeah, which is fair. The market doesn't want it.
So.
No one really gives a shit. So. The most important question of this podcast is, what is a West Coast IPA?
Yes, indeed. So West Coast IPAs, from really just a bit of quick searching before we jumped on here, and just general knowledge that we've built up over the years. It's a sub-style of American IPAs. American IPAs, just mainly differentiating themselves from their old world counterparts, the English IPAs,
yes.
Which is I mean, there are more there are more subtle differences, but are largely difference in hop varieties that differentiate the English IPAs to American IPAs, and then West Coast IPAs being a substyle of American IPAs, where really it's like a marked increase in hopping rates, and it as exactly as it sounds, originated in California on on the West Coast, and tends to have flavors that bring out more of a bitter, piney, that West Coast citrus kind of vibes. What that with the aggressive hopping that goes into them, those are the flavors the flavors that come out of it. You get more resinous flavors from the hops. You end up with, like I was describing, caramelized grapefruit. I find is a pretty common flavor that I get out of West Coast IPAs, and where you get kind of that caramelized flavor out of it, that sweetness that kind of balances the bitterness really, really nicely in a well-made West Coast IPA.
Well said. Yes, and obviously, yeah, that nice bready malt mixing with that the sort of sweet, something like bitter. Because there's like piney bitterness, but there's also sometimes that grapefruit pith type bitterness in there as well, depending on how the approach.
Exactly.
To expand on what you're saying here, I've got a couple of articles that I found that were kind of discussing it. One of them was saying that it was in 1965, apparently, Fritz Maytag of Anchor Brewing brewed the first an English-style pale ale with American hops using a little-known British technique called dry hopping and a little-known Oregon-grown hop called Cascade. So that was Liberty Ale. Excuse me. And that was the first one. And then later, Ken Grossman at Sierra Nevada dropped the Sierra Nevada Pale Ale. And I think that specific beer would arguably be known, and that must have been 1970, fucking hell, would have been argued to be like the great granddaddy of American West Coast IPAs. And that one changed the game for a lot of people. It's come up a lot on the podcast. It was a beer that's responsible for getting a lot of people into craft beer and a lot of people into brewing, or at least in the beer industry. So that beer is iconic. And then in 1994, so that's 24 years later, Vinny, I don't know how to say his last name, Cilurzo, whatever, from, it was Blind Pig Brewery, which is now Russian River, brewed Blind Pig, which was at 92 IBUs, which is international bittering units, by the way, back then. So that was also one of that was probably, you know what everything's like in culture, was like something happens, everyone gets used to it, whoa, let's blow our mind, and then someone will come and they'll just level it up. So from what I understand here, Vinny leveled it up from the Sierra Nevada Pale Ale. So that was 94. And then a few other ones, and obviously he did Pliny the Elder, Pliny the Younger. There's another one called Bear Republic's Racer 5. And that was sort of in Northern California. Then in San Diego and SoCal, you had breweries like, and this isn't really giving me any years, but Stone doing a whole bunch of their stuff. They were, just their regular IPA. Stone IPA was a classic West Coast. Ballast Point was Sculpin, a fantastic beer. And Green Flash, that Nate you mentioned earlier, who did Palette Record, but they had a bunch of much more approachable West Coast, which we used to be able to get the LCBO here. So I had a lot of that back in the day. It was amazing. And it was just, Green Flash's West Coast IPA. So there's actually a pretty short description just to go along with what you said here, which I think is pretty cool. I said, these beers are the perfect antidote to long hot days and the Mediterranean climate of California. Hop additions and zero subtlety with aggressive bitterness and notes of citrus and tropical fruit, a resinous pine or sap-like quality, and often a dank or weed-like aroma. This style should pour bright with no haze and have a darker color from the malt addition as well as a bone-dry finish. The ABV should be on the higher end of the IPA scale, starting at around 6%, heading towards 8%, and the mouthfeel should be nimble and crisp. So I feel like that's pretty accurate.
Yeah, that's a really good style description right there.
Yeah.
And
yes.
speaking of speaking of the malt bill too, I mean, it's very easy when talking about IPAs, and particularly American style IPAs, to focus exclusively on the on the hops, because it tends to be what is most upfront and the kind of the obvious ones to pick out. But to talk about the malt bill, it takes it certainly takes a very refined brewer to make the malt stand out in a West Coast IPA. And one that I had recently was the latest version of Red Letter Day, which is Tooth and Nail's anniversary West Coast IPA. And Matt told me that that he thinks it's the best IPA that they've done at Tooth and Nail. So I was very keen to try it. And what I found was very interesting about that one is that the hop flavors were very interestingly delicate on that, and the malt bill really stood out in it, which was it's no surprise that Matt was able to do that with the West Coast IPA, because he's one of the most refined brewers in Canada. I don't think anyone who's had Tooth and Nail would argue with that, and that it's just a testament to his abilities to brew a West Coast IPA that good, where the malt character kind of contributes so much to the overall flavor of the beer.
Well, a fantastic example, and we both had that beer this year, and I thought about, because I had one left, and I was like, it's probably getting on the older side by the time we got around to doing this, so I'm glad we didn't sort of have an older beer for that, but the color was completely different. This is definitely more you could almost mistake what we're drinking right now for kind of like a lager of some sort.
Yep.
Whereas the Red Letter Day was damn near an amber ale as far as the way it looked.
Yep. It did have a more of a reddish tinge to it.
Hence the name, which is very cool. But one thing, and this is kind of why I was trying not to drink too much more of this one, because I was saying to you earlier, I wanted to kind of keep these going, because because if you're going to have 4 West Coast IPAs in an evening, which, to be honest, bro, I was fucking looking forward to this. Because it's I could drink these, and so could you, all the time. And I think neither of us have 4 West Coast IPAs in the session. So I think it's going to be fat. I know we're both it's okay, we'll drink them all later. But to try them side by side, to really show the differences between these beers, to show it's not one-dimensional. And I'm thinking of this because of what you just described. If we had Red Letter Day compared to this, it's night and day. They're both West Coast, but they have very different approaches, and they're both exceptional within themselves for their own reasons. And all of these beers tonight are very different, and neither of us have had all of these ones side by side, so it's going to be an interesting experiment to do so. Do you think it's a little early to crack the next one, or am I getting excited?
No, let's do it. Let's do it.
So the first one was from Ontario.
Okay. You keep talking. I'll be right back.
Okay. This next beer is from Quebec. We wanted to make sure that, at the very least, we represented for both provinces. And when Nate comes back, I will confirm with him, and I know he will agree, that this particular brewery in Quebec quite potentially was the reason that both of us got back into West Coast IPAs. I was just saying that this particular brewery in Quebec could be the reason that both of us got back into West Coast so heavy, because I don't recall being so interested in them until this brewery came along.
I would say that's definitely the case, especially with the number of them that they put out. It's amazing to me that they've managed to put out this many variations on West Coast styles, and it's I think that the West Coast ones that they put out, I'm more excited for those than I am for any other style they put out. And I love a lot of styles that they make, but the West Coast ones, every single time I want it, I want them as much as possible.
Could not agree more. And that's why we had to have this brewery on here. So this is Sankey and Baron's Cypress. West Coast IPA. Now, this is their 6.5 IPA version. They have multiple ones. They are all named after various trees that are found in the West Coast, which is super cool because I learnt different tree names because of this. And they've got multiple ones. They have one called Juniper, which is 5%, which is more of a West Coast Pale Ale. Then they have like Cypress at 6.5. They have Witchwood, which I believe is 7. And they have another one that we're going to be getting into later at a higher ABV. And the fact that this is why this was so important to us. And like the fact that these guys, like Nate, you just said, the fact that they must have done at least 8 to 10 different West Coasts.
I think so.
Which is just insane. In 2022, that's the point. Well, within the last 2.5 years, coming up on 3, like it's just bonkers that they've done this many, and they're all so different. It's just a real testament to the brewery, but also to the flexibility of the style. Look at that head. Oof. And also
isn't great?
So it's basically the same color as the Anderson for the most part. First of all, huge shouts to Jacob for making sure that both Nate and I had this beer. It was Sankiem, like I said, inspired this podcast. And Jacob, when we told him that we were doing it, he made sure that we both had this beer and another one they had at the time. I was like, you don't have to rush it out. You know, we're not doing it for a beer. He's like, yeah, we're probably not going to do another one till like sometime in December, so I've got to get you these guys. I was like, yeah, man.
That's right.
It was just like very sweet of him. He's a good friend of both of ours, of course. So, you know, and he knew that we were going to feature not one but 2 beers from his brewery on this podcast, and they are just, it's mind-boggling to be, and Nate would agree.
Absolutely.
Sorry for all the content, guys. You know how it goes. We crack a beer, there's going to be content out the ass. You know,
that's what we do.
It's just insane how good their West Coast are. So, tell us about Cypress, Nate. Do you you said you know the hops for this one.
I will, but can we take a sip first?
I was hoping you would say that. Cheers, brother. Get that in you.
Cheers.
Just.
Oh, man.
Isn't it just it's home? It's glorious.
That's great.
Like,
that's
okay.
Great. So let's talk about let's talk about flavor here, because this one is different than the Anderson one. I find this one is a bit lighter on the palate, and as far as Sankiem's West Coasts go, I think this is probably one of the lightest on the spectrum.
Okay.
And I'm not talking and I'm not talking in color or appearance. I'm talking just how it sits on the palate. Like, I find this one is kind of lighter, crisper, like just a bit kind of airy. It's not thin, but it just but it just kind of feels lighter on the palate, if that makes sense. It has a bit more of a floral vibe going on to it than the Anderson one did, and as some of the other ones do. It's drier. It's got a bit less of the resinous kind of stickiness. It's less sappy than some of the other ones are. It is definitely still piney, though.
Yes.
It's definitely still got some grapefruit pith for sure, and another citrus zest in it. That's my immediate impression. What do you think?
Agreed 100%. I would like to add, I'm getting a lot of the candied citrus in this one. There's this extra sort of sticky sweetness that's a little more amplified than even the Anderson. And if I'm smelling both the cans, I really like smelling the cans directly. There's still some beer in this one, but I like smelling them when they're empty whilst I'm drinking them, because you get a bit of a different, it's been sitting in here for some time, so you get a different smell. The Anderson is more malty, and I feel like there's a little more sweeter on the for the Cypress, and it's just so. 6.5. It's almost like both you and I really love. We talked about it a bunch. That's the money zone for IPAs for us. Well, actually, I can't really speak for you on that. That's probably not fair. No, it's mine. Do you agree
Yeah,
with that?
I tend to, my preferences tend to trend a little bit stronger than you. Um, like, I mean, for most IPAs, like 6.5 is a good spot to be. I prefer anything between 6.5 to like 6.5 to 8, and I generally prefer something stronger, not just because of the alcohol, but normally I like something with a bit of a heftier body to it, and that tends to come in at higher ABVs.
Completely fair. And the good thing about the quality of the beer that both of us drink these days is the brewers actively work on amplifying that body in the lower ABVs. And I feel like a beer like this is just not. I mean, we're going to have a 8% in a little bit, but it's going to be interesting to try that side by side with the others to see how much more hectic it is. But I feel like these do a real good job. Like, you are not lacking in flavor in any shape or form.
Certainly not. Certainly not. And to come back to the aroma for a second, another difference that I found, like the Anderson one. I don't know if you noticed this as well, but like the Anderson one always like stands out as quite dank to me. Like it's one that always is the first example in my head, like of a dank IPA. Like I really get that strongly with the Anderson one. This one less so. What sticks out to me more in this one is the floral aspect.
Yes. And to go along with that, this beer, we do know the hops. So this has Simcoe, Equinox, Apollo, and Eclipse. So Simcoe
Yes, right.
is something that you mentioned earlier, which is very well known for West Coast IPAs because it does give a lot of that dankness. Equinox is like a real kind of like almost peppery, which and sort of herbal vibe to it. I don't know a lot about Apollo or Eclipse as far as what they would contribute, but I imagine that the first two probably are maybe the other Apollo and Eclipse are supporting hops to the other two. Just
I'm not sure either. Eclipse, I'm fairly certain is fairly new. The first beer that I remember seeing Eclipse in was Dominion City's Link Up Pale Ale. Actually, that was the first time I had seen Eclipse. That's not to say that it hadn't, that it wasn't on the scene beforehand. That's just the first time I saw it.
You have an impeccable memory, sir. I don't know how you remember stuff like this. You always just pull these gems out. I'm like, fuck, yes. I'm very impressed. I appreciate it because my memory's a sieve. It's horrendous. I need to work on it. But this is like very interesting. I mean, 4 hops is probably the maximum amount of hops you could have in a beer before it becomes maybe a bit of a convoluted mess. But Sankiem, as we have probably professed time and time again on all of our platforms, are just above and beyond exceptional with everything that they do. And I imagine both of us would probably agree that their most exceptional product, amongst a suite of exceptional products, are their West Coast offerings. They're just... How do you make 10 different West Coast IPAs in 2022? It doesn't make any sense to me. Like, how do they even do this? I'd love to... I've never met Dimitri, but I'd love to talk... Who's their brewer? I'd love to just talk to him and go, bro, what the fuck are you doing? What's happening here? Talk to me.
It's the kind of thing that if they were to decide all of a sudden that they're only going to brew one style ever again, I would be saying, please make it West Coast.
I actually couldn't agree more. And I was trying to like skim through Untappd to see if I could get a bit of a... Okay, no, right. I was trying to see if I could get like a gauge to how many beers they've done in West Coast. But yeah, there's just... It's so crazy how different the style could be. I feel like that's, maybe people think West Coast and they think, this little box of what it could be. But I feel like they have like reawakened a love for this beer, which is nostalgic for you and I, because I think we got into beer about the same time, like nerding out about it.
Yeah.
So, we've been in a decade and some change, and it takes us back to those days when this was everything, and this was arguably the most exciting shit that you could get, aside from some European stuff, or if you landed the American West Coast or something like that. And it's just so refreshing. Fortunately, Jacob sent us a couple of he sent me a couple of each of these. I think you even got yourself some more because you're a smart man. And I had one of these the other night, and I was just, fuck, man. I was like, I can't wait to do this podcast. It's just so good.
Yeah, it's like I could drink this every goddamn day.
Every beer session, honestly, like I try, like you said, usually it's happened a few times lately where like I think I texted you maybe like a week ago. I'm like, bro, I really think I'm going to go for West Coast. If I really thought about it and I had a choice, I'd probably go for a West Coast. And I think you text me like a week later and you're like, dude, this is just fucking insane. Like it's not even about being drunk or lit. It's just more just like, this is just glorious.
It's just really, really good.
It's truly spectacular. And obviously the artwork that Sankiem do around this with all the different trees, and I imagine that's an actual cypress tree, and I was familiar with
it. Probably is. Jacob's attention to detail is exceptional.
Is A1. But yeah, I mean, look, it's definitely, I wouldn't say markedly different than the Anderson, but it's different. I feel like these two arguably are more in the similar-ish vein, but their still approach isn't identical. They're still very different beers, like you were pointing out. So even within a similar, I think 6.2, I think was the Anderson. It's just phenomenal stuff. So continuing on with the nerdy shit, if there's nothing else we wanted to say about the beer itself.
No, I mean, I think we've covered it on the beer, on the beer itself. I could gush about this beer and their West Coast IPAs all day, I think.
And I agree, and we will continue to do so. Trust me, guys. That's not going anywhere.
Yeah, we will.
I'm just scanning through some of these articles that just had a few good points. Someone's saying here that Stone upped the hops level. Like Stone was really responsible for that. Someone's like, it became almost like a chili eating contest. Someone came out with 75 IBUs, another brewer came out with 85 IBUs. So I think this is around the time, the early 90s, which was, from what I can tell here, around the same time or just before, or maybe just after Blind Pig came out, which I didn't know that, that was the first one. Also, fun fact, Green Flash trademarked the term West Coast IPA in 2011.
Did they?
How's that, huh? Which is pretty crazy. And it was I remember having that beer. I can't remember if even my friend Phil from BrewHeads brought it up, because he was bringing those in 2014. He came up twice to Montreal, 2014, 2015. And I think we also had access to the LCBO. We're bringing them in. So we just had a lot more access to them. So that was that. And then, of course, you've got Dogfish Head, who came in, and we're sort of kicking that around. This was 2003, apparently, when they started doing that. When they did the 60-minute, 90-minute, 75-minute, 120-minute IPA, things like that. So I think they really took it to the next level as far as that's concerned. So it seemed like maybe both coasts, because they're based in Delaware, so both coasts in the US were really going hard. I don't know in Canada. I don't know if you have any historical knowledge locally, if anyone was doing anything sort of wild here in that realm, maybe in the 90s, as opposed to the 2010s that we were talking about.
Oh, geez.
It's a lot, right?
I couldn't say. Yeah, no, I don't. I don't have a historical sense of what was going on in the beer scene in Canada at that time, unfortunately.
That's okay. I mean, I would say, just like with most cultural trends, I guess, that sort of permeate Western culture, they typically come from the States. Even growing up in Australia, all the cool shit came from the States. And to see how Americanized Australia is now, it's kind of wild, because it was not like that growing up. So, yeah, they really are driving that side of things. So obviously, we in Canada picked it up, and the rest of the world picked it up too. So I'm just sort of scanning through this here. Okay, so this list on First We Feast, who do Hot Ones, they put together, it's called 40 Years of Influence, 10 beers that define the West Coast style IPA, which I think is pretty damn interesting. And this is what they got. They surveyed 5 different brewmasters. So from Stone, Golden Road, Eagle Rock, Noble Ales, and Anchor. And they wanted to say what the most influential West Coast IBAs, and most of them were from California. No, they're all from California, which is probably pretty important.
That's not surprising.
Not surprising. It's probably smart. Anchor Liberty Ale, which was the one I mentioned at the beginning there, that came out in the 70s. Which was the first one that kind of strayed beyond an English ale. So whilst it wasn't a real IPA because it was still a pale ale, it was in that vein, and it was the first one to use American hops and the first one to use Cascade. Very hilarious in this time to say little known Oregon hop Cascade, which is pretty cool. I haven't had Liberty Ale for a while. I imagine it would be pretty soft in comparison to most other things today. Of course, another beer is Sierra Nevada's Pale Ale, and of your favorite, Nate, Celebration Ale.
Yes.
I wonder if we could, maybe this is probably a good pause to talk about what Celebration Ale is and your passion for all things wet and fresh hop in that realm.
Yeah. This is a good time for that. And so and interestingly, like we talk about Celebration, and it's one that I gush about all the time. And actually, I've not yet ever had Celebration. I've
Really?
that's the thing. I've had I've had beers that were kind of made in tribute to Celebration, but like I get obsessed with it every year around this time because like I follow a bunch of American people on. Like in the beer scene on Twitter and Instagram, and when they're all going wild for Celebration at this at this time of year, basically from mid-November like right through till New Year's, I'm seeing it all over their feeds and just getting so jealous. And Celebration is a fresh hop IPA, and I actually had to check myself on a distinction here because I've fallen into the trap that a lot of people do, which is kind of equating fresh hop and wet hop, and it's Tooth and Nail that set me straight on this with the post, because they just re-released Hop Hugs just today, in fact, I think, or it was today or yesterday. Hop Hugs is Tooth and Nail's ode to Sierra Nevada Celebration, and in their post announcing its release today, they broke down the distinction between wet hop and fresh hop. Wet hop specifically refers to when hops are picked off the vine and thrown into the brew within 24 hours of being picked. So that so that's wet hop is basically bind to brew within less than a day.
Okay.
So fresh hop is different though, because it's not because it's not necessarily going straight from vine to brew. It is it is picked fresh and often pelletized, or or it might even be flash frozen or something like that. And it is I believe it is still whole cone, but it's not necessarily being picked and put in the same day kind of thing, which is the distinction. It's something about when it's picked and kind of how it's then packaged and dehydrated or whatnot. What I would say, just go to Tooth and Nail's Instagram and read their post on the release of Hop Hugs today for a full breakdown on the distinction between fresh and wet hop. But coming back around to it, I need to get my hands on Sierra Nevada Celebration at some point, but we're really, really lucky in Ontario, and especially here in Ottawa, to have not only Hop Hugs, but since we did the Fall Styles pod a few weeks back, one of the ones that I mentioned on there that I wasn't expecting to see this year was Dominion City's Winding Down the Vines, which was a harvest ale that they that they did. I think it must have been 5 years ago, and they hadn't brewed it since. But they re-released that just a week or two ago. It is different than it was 5 years ago. 5 years ago, it was like a pale gold kind of thing, and now it is kind of exactly like Hop Hugs and exactly like Celebration. It is kind of like it is red, like a copper red in color, and a completely different flavor profile. There's like a caramel malt profile to it, which really comes out, and that and that fresh hop like kind of thing going on with it being earthy and grassy and and floral, and you've got this bitterness that is that's balancing out the like the caramel malt sweetness. It's just delightful. So highly recommend Dominion City's Winding Down the Vines, and now that Tooth and Nail has like re-released Hop Hugs, and that has been absolute money the last 2 years, and it's now back for its third year. I would highly recommend that.
Sure, I might have to do an order then. Okay, sold. I did see that it dropped, and I was pretty keen on it. Okay, that was really good context, because that is almost like a subset of West Coast IPAs, arguably, which we did not allow for this evening, but very cool to just sort of touch on that, particularly started from Sierra Nevada there.
Yep.
Another one that I've never heard of was called Burt Grant's IPA, and it's got this like Scottish dude. Oh, from Yakima Brewing
I've not
Company.
heard of that one.
1983, and it's got this like super Scottish, like wearing Scottish shit with like a kilt and stuff on. A little bit weird, and it was apparently the first craft beer that used IPA in the name. Huh. There you go. The next one they had was called Swami's IPA from Pizza Port Brewery in Solana Beach, California. So I've had some beers from Pizza Port in LA before. And this beer was, San Diego. Well, they're from San Diego. And they were hopped with Galena, Galena. I don't think that hop is around anymore. Centennial and Cascade. And that was, I don't know if it's still around now, but that was apparently one of the OGs. There was, of course, Blind Pig, which they call it Blind Pig Inaugural Ale, which was from 1994, from Blind Pig Brewing Company, which eventually became Russian River. I have had that. I think I remember having it for the first time at Monk's Cafe in Philadelphia, which was a fantastic experience. Very happy to find that there. I think I had that and Pliny, and I lost my collective shit back in 2019. Was not aware that it was going to be there, and very excited. So that is the classic. Have you had Blind Pig?
I have not had Blind Pig.
You have not. Okay. So that is another classic here. Lagunitas IPA, which I haven't had for forever. It's came out in 1995. They were saying that there was a regionality to IPAs, and Lagunitas took them national with this particular beer.
Right, okay.
So I haven't had it for a while. To be honest, I imagine most of us haven't had it because it was bought out by Heineken. Not that that's always a bad thing, but I imagine there's usually, if you go to a place and they've got that, they typically have better shit. So I would not lean towards drinking that. But if I went to a place that this was the best beer, I wouldn't be completely upset about it.
Yep.
Even though it's been a while. Of course, Stone's IPA. They came out in 1997. They just called it IPA. They are today the most widely available West Coast IPA. And this one was, I guess they were sort of one of the first that were really aggressive with the marketing. So I think that really helped with their branding and their gargoyle little dragon things that they had going on. Apparently on the back of the bottle it says, "This is an aggressive beer. You probably won't like it," type shit. So the way they had this really like zany marketing ploys there. So that was a really big one. The next one, and I don't even know how much I want to talk about this right now. Pliny the Elder, in my opinion, the greatest West Coast IPA of all time. That came out in 2000 from Russia River. This evening, I won't go too much into it, but we were supposed to have double dry hop Pliny. The universe wanted something else to happen, and it did not happen. So it is what it is. So every time I see this, my heart is being wrenched a bit. But this is a... have you had this before at all, bro?
I have not, no. I've not had the privilege of trying anything from Russian River yet.
Okay. So that's definitely going to be goals right there. This is easily the best West Coast IPA I've ever had. It is the quintessential one as far as I'm concerned. It has Amarillo Centennial CTZ, don't know what that is, and Simcoe hops. And they brewed it for the beer for the first ever double IPA festival in 2000, which is pretty cool. So that is pretty fire if you ever get your hands on that. I mean, they're relatively easy to get in the West Coast, at least around. They're in Sonoma County, so there's 2 different spots they have up there. So definitely get your hands on that one. Of course, Green Flash's West Coast IPA, as we talked about earlier, who owned the trademark. That came out in 2004, which is pretty dope. They're in San Diego. They really sort of represented West Coast IPA more than anything else first. It is the double IPA, which is pretty cool. Oh, that's 10. There you go. So
there you are.
I've had a bunch of these, probably half of them. Almost all of them. So, I mean, those are all Americans. The thing is, like, the Canadian IPAs didn't really, like, move the needle culturally like some of the American stuff. So it was a bit of a different situation. But, there's, as you can see, there's a lot of history with this style and a lot of really impactful beers that have just changed the game, changed the brewing game completely.
Yeah, for sure.
With that,
so here's a thought that I was having. Like with the next beer that we have, I think we can probably start to talk about a lot of other breweries that make really good West Coast IPAs that we're not drinking tonight in Ontario. But while we're on Quebec, because we're focusing on Saint-Guillaume-Baron, who I think it's fair to say make the best West Coast IPAs in Quebec. But who else do you think making good West Coast IPAs in Quebec that we're not talking about tonight? One that came to mind for me, and it maybe falls more into the American IPA category as opposed to a West Coast per se, but Le Castor Yakima.
Oh my gosh!
That's one that's been on the scene for quite a while, and American IPA for sure, but definitely leaning west for sure. Wouldn't you say?
100% agreed. That beer changed a lot for me when I first moved to Montreal and getting hold of that beer. It rocked my shit. Almost every, how like I was saying before that a lot of brewers are saying that Sierra Nevada's pale ale really changed their life. I hear in interviewing people in Quebec, probably 7 or 8 out of 10 of them said that Yakima changed their life. The Yakima IPA changed everything.
Yeah.
And it's such an important beer that Dan from Le Castor, who doesn't drink right now, he's had a head injury, he's not allowed to drink. He really changed everything with that beer and the approach. It was kind of like the way we were describing some of the other beers that happened in the States that really were aggressively hopped, that were, it was a cool marketing, like the logo's dope, the label art was dope, they had the bottle with the printed on the glass. I just remember being blown away. I moved there in 2012, I must have got it then. And it was just such a spectacular beer. It was in like this, I don't know if it was a 750, it was like a 650 or something. It was in like a sort of a bottle.
I feel like it was when one of those weird 650 ones.
And when almost everything in Quebec were very slow to get onto cans. So when I was first getting into beer, it was fucking annoying to lug shit back home. But it was a genuinely special beer. And to be honest, if we didn't have the 2 from Saint-Guillaume, I think that would have been probably the priority from Quebec to have on this podcast to really represent what Quebec West Coast IPAs are all about. Another really fantastic one was Pit Caribou's. I think it was like they called it American IPA, but it was more of a West Coast. It was. I remember my first ever beer trade was this dude in Alberta somewhere, and I got him those 2 beers, Yakima and the Pit Caribou, and traded that, and he sent me some stuff. I forgot what it was, but it was like they were the best 2 IPAs at the time, and I'm like, here. I was broke as shit back then too, so doing that was a big deal for me, and I really I was like really happy for him to try. If I was going to give somebody the beers from Quebec that I would wanted to try as far as the high level IPAs, those were the 2. Just
nice,
genuinely spectacular offerings. Another one, which you could probably riff off this one, was Judiciel's Moralité.
Moralité.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Just and that was
excellent choice.
That came out around the same time, I think, early 2010s ish, and fuck, man, that was a great beer. Then they did the Immorality, which was like and that was a collab with the Alchemist, which is fucking crazy. Like JF collab with the Alchemist on that, which is like one of probably the only long-standing Alchemist collab in Canada. Like, it's insane that that's what that is, which is just a ramped-up version of Morality.
Yeah, that's bananas.
Yeah. Just, like, I think those three... I don't know if there's any more that you can add to it, but those three have to be the top-tier West Coast, like OG West Coast. So I guess we could call it OG, and maybe there's... And then the newer era is the Sankey M's and things like that.
Yeah. Yep, I would agree.
Are we missing any though? I feel like we're definitely not. We're missing a ton.
We're certainly missing a bunch, but like those are definitely probably the three most iconic ones.
Yeah.
In the scene there, but
I wonder if I'm just really quickly googling it to see right now. Oh, top Quebec IPAs. Le Trois Mousquetaires IPA. No, that's a Oh, this is Hop Citizen. So shouts to Dwayne. He did a beer. This is in 2016, so it's actually perfect because an older blog post is going to give us that style. This is pre-haze. So Le Trois Mousquetaires IPA. That one was one of the first Quebec ones because Noah told me to do that in 2017, and I got it warm off the shelf and it was bad, but he told me it was haze. So I maybe originally it was Westy a bit. No. Oh, Benelux. Fuck. So Benelux, I went to Benelux a lot because I went to McGill. When I moved to Montreal, I went to McGill, the continuing studies, the old motherfucker part of it, and it wasn't in the Harry Potter university, it was across the street. And there was a dude in my class who was American, but he lived in the street next to Benelux. So he was like, yo, I go to this brewery, Benelux, all the time. I'm like, oh, what's this all about? And so I went with him a few times, and then that was like my go-to when people came to town. Aside from Judas CL, I took him to Benelux. And Benelux had some fantastic West Coast IPAs back in the day. The one that Dwayne had here is called Sabotage, which I do recall. But I have a feeling they had a whole, like, string of different West Coast IPAs, which is fantastic. He also had Morality here, which is great. Oh, yeah, Dunham had their Cyclop series, where they had different... that's perfect. Where they had different hop versions of it. They're mostly New England now, but probably back in the day, they were more on the West Coast style, East Coast style of things. He had Tribal IPA from my brasserie. I've had that, but I don't recall it. No, I don't know that one. That's all he had here. Okay, that was a pretty decent article as far as like the some of the Quebec stuff. He did article Top Quebec IPAs Part 2. Okay. Oh, okay. Now this is newer, so this is all like haze now, which is not what we're talking about here. And these are all great haze, but they're not out. So we don't need to know about that. But yeah, those were some good ones. The thing is, though, it's really hard to kind of remember because you don't always like. I don't know, you don't always sort of keep this in the front of mind. Like we were saying earlier, we were concentrating on haze for so long now. So some of this is a bit of like, it's stretching the memory a bit. So like, yo, what were we drinking back then,
Yep.
But
on that note, we should probably get to the next beer, right?
Yes, sir. I was about to say. So we're going to move back to Ontario with this one. And this is a brewery that is very, very near and dear to my heart. They were the first brewery that BAOS ever collabed with, and you can see it in the screen right here. And this is their year-round West Coast IPA, or if it's not year-round, it's pretty close to it. I have not had this beer for quite some time. Excuse me. So I was pretty excited that we're going to do this, because we needed to have 2 IPAs from each province. we both already had Anderson because we did the podcast and we really thought we were so exceptional. We were both losing our shit over it that we had to keep Anderson in this podcast. But this beer is a fave for both of us. From the good lords at Sawdust City, this is Lone Pine. Nate, is this year-round or is this like a sort of a few times a year?
This is year-round, my friend.
I knew you would know it because you are just a dependable young man, and this is why we're friends. This is their, flagship West Coast IPA.
Their flagship IPA.
Which is fantastic. Shouts to Sam, Jimbo, the whole team out there. A bunch of flippin' legends. Look at that head. Oh, shit. I got excited. You know how it goes. Already, all I did was just sip the head. I didn't even drink everything properly, and I could already tell this was very different to that. Now, would you say this looks pretty similar to what we've already had?
So here is side by side with Cypress right here.
Okay. So it's pretty similar.
So pretty similar. Cypress is maybe a touch darker, and I would say that the that Anderson was even a touch darker than that. So I think this is the lightest that we've had so far.
Okay. This one is also 6.5%. It smells. It's pretty different to the last two.
Yep.
I haven't sipped it yet. Do you want to sip it first, and I can take the story?
Yeah, let's do it.
Mate, get that in.
Cheers.
All right. Fuck, man. See, this is exactly what I was hoping would happen in this episode. By the way, this was the one beer we got separately. What is your canning date on this beer?
Right. So I picked this up at the LCBO. I picked this up 5 hours ago, and the packaging date on mine is October 13th.
All right, I got September 16th, so mine is a solid month older than yours.
Yep.
The head is pillowy meringue-like.
Oh yeah.
Very citrusy nose.
Yep.
Which, while the others are insanely citrusy, I feel like this is a little more ramped up in the citrus. Would you concur with that at all?
I would.
Okay.
I would. This is there's, whereas the other ones you definitely got grapefruit quite a bit. This one even has a bit more going on that front. Like you can you can almost taste that there's like kind of like lemon and like tangerine orange kind of thing like going on in there as well. Like there's, and not just pith either. Like there's more kind of like a zest thing going on with this as well. Like a bit more of a zip to it.
I agree wholeheartedly. It's definitely the most accessible. I don't know if that's the right word for this situation, but like it's got the least piney, the least dank, the least resinous, the smoothest. It's still there. It's still bitter, still piney, still dank, but it's certainly a level below the other two beers.
Yeah, it's really, really interesting having having these side by side in this, because if I had thought to describe, because I've had Lone Pine many, many times, and if I was to think to describe it, I would have said it was aggressively piney. Because I mean, I think of it as like a really, really piney IPA, but it actually does taste more subdued on that front than the other two that we've had, and that is not in any way a negative. Like it's as delicious as it was before, but the flavors like just in comparison side by side are actually a little more delicate and subtle than than I would have interestingly said. Like this is making for an interesting experiment on that front.
Which is exactly what we were hoping for. we didn't want this
Yep.
to all be a whole bunch of the same things and being like, oh wow, these all taste the same. They're so different. While you were just like talking about that, I'm just like fucking like really sniffing the can, and it's like almost like mostly citrus. Like the pine is obviously there, but it's just so more subdued, as you said. That's really what it is. And the hops on this one are Summit, Simcoe, Columbus, and Chinook. So more C hops. Another Simcoe, which is not surprising, and Summit I know of, but not particularly familiar with it. They also do, and you might not remember what this is once you've got a much better memory, as we have just discussed, but they also do Twin Pines. What is that beer again? Remind me.
Now, I haven't had Twin Pine in a few years now. So my memory is not great. I don't know if it's the exact same hop profile as Lone
double
Pine,
version.
but it's right. It is a double version. It's Lone Pine's bigger brother. I don't know if they changed anything in the hop bill, or anything like that, but it is meant to be Lone Pine's bigger brother. So it's more aggressively piney for sure. Like a bit heftier in body. More like I'm recalling something that's a little more resinous, a bit more like a bit sweeter in the like in the hop profile, a bit more sappy kind of thing is what I'm thinking of from the last time I had it, which is a few years ago at this point.
Okay, so it looks like there's people checking into it in the last couple of weeks on Untappd, which means maybe it came out more recently. I feel
like I would have seen that if it had. That would have.
I would, if I saw it at the LCB, I would buy that for sure. I'll text Sam about it because I was actually talking to him the other day. My brother bumped into him, and so I shot him a text and said "G'day." But I wouldn't mind asking him about this and see what's going on, because this is first of all, their new branding is just exceptional. I love their new branding.
Great.
So
great.
I got a nice little beer mail from them today, actually, and they sent some of their bigger stuff. They have a beer called Lone Wine, which is their barley wine, and we've talked about this on the pod before. This is obviously out of scope for this pod, but when we were on Chinwag, we kind of put a bit of a pause on that for a bit because we did it for a year or so, and times changed, I guess, because things opened up or whatever. And when you boys were encouraging me, I mean, it's primarily Noah, but encouraging me to get started on some barley wine, that was one of the first ones I had, or the first one I had, whenever that was. So I now have that again. I'm very excited to get into that one. And also Blood of Cthulhu, which is their, I think it's a cranberry raspberry stout. It's fucking amazing. I love that.
Oh, it's Blood of Cthulhu is spectacular. That's one of the... like when I was first getting into the craft beer scene, like in the social media scene, Blood of Cthulhu, I remember was kind of one of the ones that was hard to get your hands on back before the days of everyone shipping across Ontario, when trading was more of a regular thing. I remember that one being a very sought after trade worthy beer.
Oh yeah, because they were
and rightly so. Like it was that's a dynamite fruited imperial stout. It's really, really fucking good.
Jammy and chocolate, out of scope, but still, I love Sawdust.
Out of scope, but you mentioned Lone Wine, and while technically out of scope, not hugely out of scope either, because in a way I feel a little bit like American barley wine, in a sense, like really kind of dialed up West Coast IPAs. Like if you think of Dogfish Head, and with their 60, 90, 120 and whatnot, 120-minute IPA
is basically
really
a barley wine.
At that strength is basically an American barley wine. Like once you get up to the point of 12-14% with something that is aggressively hopped and and kind of needs to have a pretty hefty malt presence to to turn out that kind of like that kind of ABV. You're basically in American barley wine territory at that point.
I wonder then if they called the beer Lone Wine because it's a ramped up version of essentially this beer that we're drinking right now. To Untapped says it's 11.2, and obviously it's not hopped the same way, but it's sticky caramel toffee, big and bold, hopped in a very specific way. They've still got here, even the description, subdued orange citrus with hints of marmalade and pine. So you are right.
See,
that it is.
I have a feeling that's exactly why they called it that.
Interesting. Okay, I mean, this is the latest version. I'm genuinely excited because the branding is cool. Like the picture of it, Jesus Christ, looks so much like this beer, just a bit more opaque because barley wines typically aren't super clear. But
exactly,
that's a really good point. So like an IPA really is, a barley wine is just a really ramped up IPA for the most part, which is very cool. So it is on brand with this, and they are still advertising it as, or at least describing the tasting notes are piney and orange, which is what we're getting in this right now. But I guess Twin Pines is ramped up a bit more, and then going from 8 to 11.2 for the barley wine. It's cool when you look at it like that, eh?
Yeah, it is for sure. And if you look at different kinds of barley wines too, like if you get away from the American barley wines, if you look more at like English barley wines, those are ones where you don't get the same kind of hop presence, but you do get a lot more kind of those are the ones where you get more of the flavors, like raisins and dates, and and kind of the different kind of maltier, sweeter characteristics that that come through in English barley wines, and those do come actually those actually do come forward in some American barley wines as well. They're a very there's a lot of layers in a good in a good barley wine that come up in those hop characters and those malt characters, that strength, and kind of when they've been often aged for a while, the layers of flavor that can come through in a really good one turn in really interesting ways.
I agree. You and I both have been investing in a few double barrel barley wines recently. The one from Barncat, Sweet Release, we both got. There was the double finisher from Third Moon. I think we both got that too. There's a few different... Do you want to tap the camera there? I think you just sort of went a little out of focus. I just noticed right now.
Oh, did I?
If you just tap your face on the screen, it'll probably bring it right back on in.
Yep.
Yeah. Tap that beautiful grill of yours. There you go, There you go, you fucking sex puppy. Need to see that face crisp and clean. Yeah, there's a whole bunch. And I've been like... I do my big beer Wednesdays where I do big stouts or barley wines or whatever, and I look forward to it every week, man. Like, I've really, really enjoyed it, and I've been trading with my friend in Montreal recently, and he's been getting me to get him the Ontario ones because there's a whole bunch just happened to be released here recently, and it's been cool trading with him because he's getting them. I wouldn't have probably got him if he didn't hit me up. So I was like, all right, I'll get one. He'll get like 6 of them, and then I'll grab one. So now I'm like starting to stock up a little bit, and I just got the Lone Wine. I feel like I've just got a whole bunch of fire stouts and barley wines. I'm like, I was about to say I'm looking forward to winter. I'm fucking not looking forward to winter, but I got all these big bastard beers to get me through, and it's really cool to sort of discover barley wine. And I hadn't thought of it as much as what you just said, that it is the ramped up version of an IPA. So what we're doing is drinking barley wine, a mini barley wine almost. There's hops differently, of course, but it's kind of cool.
A session barley wine?
Session barley wine, which is, Lone Pine is their session version of Lone Wine. It's pretty cool when you really think about it, because that's essentially what it is, and it kind of puts IPAs, or at least this West Coast, in perspective of how deep. Like, all you do is ramp up the malt profile a bit, boom, it's a whole other style. You can start.
Yeah, for sure.
You got the low ABV, like the 5%ers, which we didn't really deal with tonight. But you got where we're at around the 6-ish, 6.5 or whatever the fuck, and you go into the doubles around the 8, and then you can just go. There isn't many. Oh, this is a bit of a thing that on that train of thought. There isn't many triple West Coast IPAs.
Oh no,
I know
not
one.
really.
Pliny the Younger. So the big one that releases every February, where people drive to. They go up to the brewery and they line up outside in the cold and do their whole thing and to get one little pour in the thing. But they started canning it, so I think it's a little easier to get. But still, very highly sought after version of Pliny, which is pretty dope. But aside from that, I can't think of any.
I think that Barncat has done a triple West Coast.
Oh, do you know who did?
Think of
Third Moon did one the other day. I swear to God.
Right. Yes. That's right. I remember that too.
I'm gonna pull that up real quick. Oh, you know what?
I think that was was that a conjuration or was that?
It was a conjuration. You're exactly right.
I think so. Yeah.
God, your memory, my guy. It's it's very, very good. Yes, it was a conjuration, like the latest version, and I purposely didn't get it because I don't really like triples of anything. But I almost, as you said that out loud, I was like, "Oh, I fucked up. I should have got it." Is that it? Conjuration. Yep, triple IPA in the form of a brand new conjuration. Conjuration 16 is a West Coast triple IPA clocking in at 11%. Dry hop with Centennial and Chinook, but it's like hazy.
11. Holy shit, that is bold.
An 11% triple IPA. Like, even on the reason I didn't get it was on my big. I can't even see a time when I would drink it. That's my problem. On my big beer nights. That's a
lot of beer.
That's a lot, bro. Like, I don't mind drinking, like, some of the ones, dude, you know how we got those Barncat wheat wines and shit? Like, they're like 14%. The double finisher, I think, from Third Moon is like, isn't it 16% or something? Like, I would drink that to myself, and that would be all I would have for that evening. But I don't mind doing it if it's a barley wine or a stout on my big beer night. But I don't know if I really want a IPA on that night. I want to dabble into these other styles. So I just
for some reason, like a triple IPA will fuck you up even more for some reason. I don't know why it feels like they hit you harder even than like a big stout or something like that. It's nuts.
Every time. Yeah, man. The only time I can.
I don't know if it's just because you naturally drink like IPAs faster than stouts. Maybe it's as simple as that, but I don't know what it is.
I had the one, you got me a Bar Canada one last time we met up. We met last weekend, and I had it on one of the nights. I wasn't supposed to drink. I don't drink Mondays, but I had a podcast Monday for Link Up, which just dropped now that we're recording right now. But that night I was like, well, I'm drinking. What am I going to do? Not drink anymore. So I was like, well, to stop me drinking too much, how about I have that triple IPA? And that was a good time for it. But I remember feeling, I think in the end, like I only had 5% beer earlier, and then that one I felt pretty lit. Whereas on Wednesday, I had also thanks to you, I had a Péché Mortel, which is probably one of the greatest beers ever made, period, point blank. I don't think anybody's ever arguing. It is just so deeply spectacular. And then after that, I still had an 11% Imperial Stout, full can, both of them to myself, no problem though. Like, no dramas. All of them. You
probably nursed that over an hour and a half though, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah, for sure. Like those, and I think that's what I was kind of supporting your argument that maybe the triple IPA that I had on the Monday, I was probably like but
probably like half an hour 45 max.
Absolutely. And then the other beer, you want to tap that camera again? And then the oh no, you're good. No, you're good. Okay, kick back in. And then the stout, you're right, absolutely nursing it hour and a half at least for that. And even the first one, I probably, because I wait till after I eat, so I've got a nice little foundation so it doesn't fuck me up. It's almost like instead of dessert, I'll have those beers, which is my way of not drinking. Making fun, like, not drinking nights, but you end up having that. But yeah, so triple A. Sorry, I know we were digressing a bit, but yeah, triple West Coasts. Very, very cool of Third Moon to do that. They've done one or two other West Coast IPAs. I don't know if I got hold of it. I think one of the earlier conjurations was a West Coast IPA.
Yeah, I'm recalling a double West Coast IPA in one
Double.
of the earlier conjurations.
Did you get it?
Yeah, I did.
How was
I
she?
remember it being good.
Ooh. I don't recall.
All right.
Yeah.
So how about this? We're
hour and a half in.
just going to take another sip there, but we should grab that.
The last one.
We should grab the fourth beer, and then before we drift too far off this topic, we're going to talk about the other beer. But then I want to talk about notable Ontario West Coast IPAs.
Very important. Okay, perfect. So you want to go fetch that last
All
one?
right.
So, as we discussed earlier, we're swinging back to Quebec for this other beer, and we just had to do two from this brewery. They're like we were saying, the stuff is just impeccable. This beer is glorious, and then I think what I'd like to do is almost like go around the circle of beers that we had and take a sip from everything, and just to see side by side just exactly how different all of these beers are. Which is kind of what we wanted to demonstrate tonight. We didn't know exactly how it would go, but we know they're all pretty different beers. And we really wanted to make sure that we were showcasing the depth that West Coast IPAs could have, and how different and how unique and how just fucking beautiful they are. I was just saying, Nate, after we sort of deal with this beer, maybe towards the end, we could do like do a sip from each one and really do them side by side, just to show how unique and how different all of these beers are. Now, this is probably the oldest beer we're having tonight. I just looked at how this is about just over 2 months old. Hang on.
Yep.
Oh, actually, no. My Lone Pine was older than that by a few days. Yeah. So, not too bad. Everything is just relatively fresh. And do you know what one good thing about West Coast IPAs are in comparison to Haze? I like Haze within 1 to 2 weeks. When you start getting around the month, even Troy from Badlands was just like, he thinks the beers aren't as good as they could be. With West Coast, they last way longer than... for sure. Which I very much appreciate. Oh, fuck, I went and opened this before we showed the people. So, we are doing...
Did I.
Yeah, I saw you do it, I forgot. Sankey & Baron's Sitka Double West Coast IPA at 8%. This is a ramped up version. This is, I don't know, I think they might do one other 8%er. You would know, Nate.
No, there's been a few, because Sequoia for sure.
Oh, Sequoia.
And there's one other one which I don't know if I'm remembering the name of it right. I feel like it's not Double Simcoe. I need to find out what what this is now. It
wouldn't be called. I think they're all named after trees. But
yeah. So that doesn't sound right. There's got to be Double Douglas. That's what it was.
Douglas. There you go. I actually just think it's called Douglas. No. And then
but there were two. There were two, because there was one called Douglas, and then they did a Double Douglas.
Honestly, I trust you over all this. I believe you. I don't know anything. Nathaniel, I'm just going to
start telling you. I'm going to just start telling you lies at one point, and just make sure that you're just going to believe me every time.
You see how trusting I am? I'm naive, Nate. I just believe you.
I just have to say, I just have to really say it with confidence, like I remember it really well, and you're just going to believe me.
I'm like, oh yeah, of course, yeah, because we all bullshit. No one ever tells the truth. You're like, oh yeah, of course, I remember that. Yeah. Douglas, yes. And once again, I've learned that there's different trees. What the fuck is a Sitka? You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
Who even knows? I guess it's whatever tree is in this fucking picture. Now, this particular beer has Simcoe again, Vic Secret, Equinox, and Nelson Sauvin. So Nelson is a
So
big...
and Vic Secret and Nelson, I thought were very interesting additions to this one, because those both are hops that you would typically associate with haze.
For sure, which is once again why I think Sankiema are the West Coast goats in Canada. Without, do you know what I'd like to do? Maybe we could do a future episode where we do a battle of the coasts, and we get a bunch from BC, and then we compare them to the shit out here. Because I think the best...
who makes the best West Coast?
Yeah, because my boy Daniel could facilitate that in... and also I got some other friends in the beer industry out there as well that would be able to do it. But I feel like the West Coasts that are in the West Coast, I'd love to go side by side. I've had a bunch, but I've never had them side by side, just like you and I have never had all of these beers side by side to really kind of understand the nuances and the differences. So that could be a fun one.
Yeah,
we can look into that for 2023. On that note, Nathaniel, get that in you, mate.
Cheers, brother. Oh my lord.
Okay. Whoa, this is very different. Oh my god.
Okay, so
I'm getting lit tonight. My goodness.
So I'm gonna say this right now, and I don't know if you'll agree with me on this, but for me, Sankiema Baron Double West Coast IPA is the absolute money spot. Like the double West Coast IPAs are I just want to bathe in this. It's so fucking good, and this is the perfect this is the perfect level of West Coast flavor for me, because I love the really kind of sticky, sappy, resinous thing that goes on in here, and in the double West Coast is where that just gets thick as fuck. It's really, really intense. This is one of those ones where there's kind of it's obviously less balanced, but I love it for that. I love that it's so kind of intense with with the sticky, sappy, resinous flavor, and the pine just comes through right after. The bitter citrus pith is intense. The malt body makes it is making it drink a bit heftier. This is the money zone for me.
I get it. It's definitely not for me. I'm more of the lighter guy, but Jesus Christ, this is impeccable. This is textbook. This is spectacular. And I love the choice of hops. It's so out of the ordinary. Like you said, Vic Secret and Nelson are very much associated with haze, not with something like this. This is by far the least transparent beer that we've had tonight.
It is.
It's intense. The nose is straight candied citrus and pine. Yep. It's so thick in comparison. It's intense. It's sweet. It's bitter. It makes you make a face when you sip it.
It does.
This is a more... And even afterwards, I'm getting the bitterness. As I started talking, I'm like, oh shit, this wave of bitterness has hit. This is more of an experience, I would say. And I would be looking for this from time to time. For the average session, I probably wouldn't want something this intense. But this is glorious. And I'm very glad I still have my other can. Because I had Cypress, and I didn't get to have this one. I've had this before, but it was a while ago. This is great, dude.
Yeah. For their double West Coast, for me, Sequoia is king.
Mm-hmm.
That one is my all-time fave.
Okay.
Because that one is is just, there's no more intense pine than in that one, I find.
Mm-hmm.
And that one is really just absolute money for me. But this one is all of their double West Coasts are this level of intensity, just kind of with different flavor focus. But yeah, this is so fucking good.
I'd almost love to talk to them to find out how they differentiate, though. Like you said, different flavor focuses. So it's whenever they make a West Coast, all right, well, this one focuses on this, so let's make another one that focuses on this. It would be an interesting conversation with Jacob and Dimitri and the team to just like, what's going on? What are you guys doing?
Yeah. And now I'm scrolling through and wanting to find what the hops are in like in Sequoia right now, because I mean that of course would would account for a lot of the flavor differences here.
Definitely.
Yeah. So here we are: Columbus, Nelson Sauvin again, and Cashmere.
Cashmere. Simcoe, Vic Secret, Equinox, and Nelson. So Equinox is a very common we've seen. Cashmere is interesting. And Nelson West Coast?
So Columbus, Nelson Sauvin, and Cashmere. Columbus is a very typical West Coast hop.
Sorry, I was
Nelson
looking at Sitka and saying that as well. Like those are the similarities between a bunch of. Hey man, it's a lot of beers right now. I get it. I get it. That's pretty dope.
I'm just messing.
I know, I love you.
But yeah, so I feel like in Sequoia, Columbus must play a huge role in in getting kind of that intense that intense resinous and and piney flavor in there too. But Nelson Sauvin, even though it doesn't necessarily read up front as a West Coast hop, Nelson Sauvin can create a lot of dank. In the haze that it's in, you can get a very dank hazy IPA with Nelson. So you could see how it would fit in West Coast in that sense.
I get it for sure. Yeah, man, it's just like it's so fascinating the way that they've just been able to deliver so many different ones and just be able to like repurpose these hops that are more known for haze into a West Coast and like, are you drinking this and can you taste the Nelson? Can you taste the gooseberry, the white wine? I mean, maybe it's subtle. Maybe it kicks in later.
I mean, no, I don't taste what you would typically associate with Nelson in this. But like, maybe it's even just in the hopping rate, like just in what quantities they do this in. You know what we got to do?
Talk to me.
The next time, we need to do another Cinquième pod, and we've got to have Dimitri on with Jacob next time, so that we can kind of probe him a little more on on the brewing process.
Yes, I will talk to Jacob about that actually, because the last time we did it was about this time, 2020. Yeah. They were on for the Link Up Series 1, of course. And that was the last time. Jacob featured on a podcast a few episodes ago on 110 with me, but it was not about Cinquième at all. It was about Cicerone.
Yeah.
So I think it could be a fantastic one if we get the four of us on. I think that would be great. Do you want to hit that? Oh no, it kicked back in. It keeps like going out of focus, but it's okay. We got your pretty face back in there.
Yeah, I'm on. Yeah, it's on autofocus right now, so it's gonna it's gonna dip in and out sometimes. We're gonna have to just ignore it, I think.
I respect it. I apologize. But yeah, I'd love to know where they're coming from, because I think the first pod that we did, we weren't really talking as much about the West Coast. I don't even recall if they had dropped West Coast at that time. Maybe they had, but maybe we weren't aware of the level of quality.
Yeah. They might not even have at that point. I'm not sure. Because I think the first West Coast they dropped, I remember it being actually about this time in 2020, because I remember it must have been like November or December 2020 when Witchwood first dropped.
Okay,
so they might not even have had it at that point.
That would make a little bit more sense. And now it's kind of more interesting to talk to them about this type of stuff, because of the fact that we featured two, we mentioned a whole bunch from Quebec. Another great one from Quebec, I just realized, for Cat Origine, their West Coast IPA is spectacular as far as the newer versions. You've said that
before.
I love it so much, and I just feel like that's what Mike really that's what he does.
That's where he excels, right?
Yeah, man. I just feel like he doesn't really love all the trendy stuff. It's not really his jam. The best beers they do are Nightmare, which we talked about in the last episode. They're
their pumpkin
porter. and their West Coast IPA. It's just exceptional as far as like a newer brewery, newer meaning like 3-4 years old, doing that type of stuff. And but we chose to feature Sankey M is just because no brewery ever, and this is also kind of a question, can you think of another brewery who has had this many different West Coast IPAs?
No, I can't.
Anywhere. Like, I just don't even think so. Even Russian River, they have 2, 3. Like, they don't have fucking 10. All named after different trees that are known to grow in the Pacific Northwest, probably. Like, that's pretty...
It's wild.
It's pretty crazy. And to be all of them... To make them all that different and to utilize New World hops that are known for New England IPAs and to not make it taste anything like a New England IPA and to utilize different portions, probably of the alpha acids and probably of the different material within these hops to deliver flavors that contribute to a West Coast IPA body, profile, all that type of stuff is mind-boggling. Like, I don't think we can.
And see, this is this is the shit that I really want to drill down on with with Dimitri. Like, we've got to let's make a note. We got to make that pod happen. We've got to.
I'll text Jacob right fucking now.
With Jacob and Dimitri, because not only do I want to drill down on how he comes about getting these flavors out of. Out of these hops that you wouldn't typically think of going in a West Coast, but I need to talk to him about his stout game too. Like, how the hell he manages to make his stouts so creamy and luscious. Insane. Just based on the malt bill alone. It's fucking bananas.
Would you say that the body on this replicates some of this? This is 8%. Lucid Dream, their breakfast stout, is also 8%. That's got one of the best bodies of the lower ABV stout I've ever had, ever. This is not too dissimilar. So whatever magic he's doing on that on the stout, he's doing here, I think.
The man is a wizard with malt. It's just bananas.
Yeah, literally, it's fucking crazy.
So we got to make that happen. Because we got to hear how he does that.
Mm-hmm.
Not to say that we're going to ask him to share his secrets, but we need to, but to at least how he thinks of how to do these things, because it's so impressive. We could drool over all of them all day. But I want to come back to something before we forget and before we close off, because we've talked about other Quebec West Coast IPAs. We should talk about notable Ontario West Coast IPAs, because we had Lone Pine, which a point that I meant to mention is that this is one of the most accessible West Coast IPAs in Ontario.
Easily.
Because it's one of those ones that you can find this in almost any LCBO in the province, which is great. It's another year. Yes, exactly. Because it's year round. So it's regularly dropped in the LCBOs. Another notable one for that, Nickelbrook Headstock is another one of the most accessible West Coast IPAs in Ontario. It's two really, really good IPAs from good breweries in Ontario that you can find almost anywhere in the province. Which is pretty great to have good West Coast IPAs that accessible.
Dead on. We almost included Headstock, but we couldn't have too many more beers in this podcast because we didn't want to. Yeah. I want to drink all of these, and I hopefully am able to do that. And we didn't want to have anything.
It's just a thing of the more beers that we have on, the less we can drink of each of them, which is a bit of a shame because they're so fucking good.
Yes, Headstock was so close to being on.
Was on our short list. It was on our short list.
We talked about it because the main two from Ontario were those two.
Yep, exactly.
Aside from Anderson. And Anderson's
really
very widely known.
Yep, exactly. A really big notable one this year, and it's come out a couple of times this year, is Fairweather California King.
Yes, I got that specifically because you lost your shit over it. And I went, because I now live very close to Fairweather. Very impressed by that beer. That was fantastic. That if that was fresher, because I think it was probably 3-4 months ago when that dropped, we would have looked at including that one too.
For sure. And that one is one of the most clean, crystal clear West Coast IPAs I've ever seen. Like, you could read a book through that. It was so clear, and
Yeah.
and that's another one where the flavors were so subtle and and so delicate, but still so distinctive. It was really, really good.
Agreed.
Another one to shout out, and I feel like this must be an ode to Blind Pig, but Bell was putting out Pig, that West Coast IPA that they've that they've dropped a couple times now.
Have you had it?
I have had it. Yeah, it's very good.
Okay.
That's another that's another very distinctively crystal clear West Coast IPA. It's very, very good.
They dropped it like yesterday.
Yeah, they did.
I'm going to Duran tomorrow, and they also dropped their Brulee Imperial Stout. So I was kind of hoping that maybe Chris might have those two there, because I keep making Bellwoods orders, and you make an order, and then literally the next day they drop like 3 other things. You're like, fuck! So I'd rather just...
Yeah.
I'm like, come on, man! Like, I just paid $10 for shipping. Like, can you? Why'd you have to drop?
Like, you're killing me here.
Killing me. Happy to pay for shipping, but like, come on! Like, it's just they drop so much. They almost drop more beers than almost any other brewery that I've seen. So I didn't try the first. It really is. I missed the first version because I did an order, and then I missed it, and I was like, oh, fuck it, and I didn't see it anywhere. So I definitely want to try that. So now that you've co-signed it, and you're my West Coast brethren, so I will proactively try and get that beer. And I didn't even consider that it was an ode to Blind Pig, which is even cooler to me at this point.
I'm just guessing. I don't think they even explicitly. I don't think they even explicitly said that, but I'm just guessing.
I can't see why that wouldn't be the case at all.
It seems like too much of a coincidence.
Very much so, particularly after all the discussions this evening. So I think that's a great one, and that seems to be. And what I do love, and I've talked about this a bunch, what I've been loving about beer in all provinces and everywhere here in Canada is that one thing that a Burlington Beer Company used to do is that they bring back, it's complicated being a wizard, they bring it back 3-4 times a year. That was the first time I saw, instead of just random beers, they'd be bringing back these core lineups regularly. I'd never seen that before. Burlington Beer Company did that, and now I'm seeing more and more breweries here doing that. Like Sankiem, how many times have they brought back Cypress? How many times have they brought back Sitka? That are like not year rounders. Like, I don't think the only year rounder at Sankiem is Citadin, which is their Pilsner, the Czech Pilsner.
Yes, and it's not and I think an important distinction is that that's not even a year rounder in cans. It's only a year rounder on tap. I don't think they have any year rounders in cans.
So it's their flagship. Then it's probably a difference between a flagship and a year rounder. Great point. But I love that Bellwoods have been doing these beers. Whether it's Cat Lady, Roman Candle, Jetsu, Double Jetsu. Something like Pig, which is more of a recent thing. They've only done 2 batches of it, so it's only the second batch is out now. I love that. I love that pattern. If I was to own a brewery, that's what I would do. I would do one-offs, and I would do regular ones that I would drop every quarter. I'd be like, all right, makes sense, every 4 months or every 3 months, drop one of these bad boys. It keeps people interested. It keeps that beer being sought after. It keeps it kind of like you tap it out, then, it goes after a month, and you've got another 2-3 months before you can get it again. I think that's very cool. And at the very least, though, that they've done this West Coast IPA, because they didn't, at least in the recent years since Hayes was the shit, Bellwoods were all over that, and they didn't really do West Coast. I remember Witch Shark used to be West Coast, and there were certain people in the scene who got pretty pissed about it being changed to a Hayes bomb. You know who I'm talking about.
Oh yeah.
And that's okay. Some people were purists and they do their thing, but I just like that they're incorporating that into their regular sort of rotation of beers. It's very cool, man. And it's I think don't Muddy York do a West Coast IPA this fire regularly?
I'm sure they do. I'm sure they do. I haven't had nearly enough from Muddy York,
Yes.
unfortunately.
Indie Ale House, that's who I was thinking of. They have a bunch of West Coast IPAs. That's who it is.
You're thinking of Instigator.
Instigator, that's the one.
Is what you're thinking of. Yes, that's a bomb West Coast.
Is that year-rounder, or is that just like a... I think it's an LCBO listing, too.
I think it is a year-rounder.
Which is fantastic. So that's a great one. That would have been, to be honest, like if we sort of... We were trying to make this as simplified as possible because we're both in 2 different places and we didn't want to have to ship beer between each other, so we were able to get hold of all of these products individually easily. So like if we just didn't want to complicate this podcast, but I feel like that would have been in the conversation.
That could have been in the conversation for sure.
Ooh.
Absolutely.
So that's a great one. Who else we got?
Yep. We'd be remiss if we didn't mention Great Lakes.
Of course.
Like Octopus Wants to Fight is a fantastic West Coast. That's a year-rounder.
And RoboHop. Sorry.
Okay, so important distinction there is OG RoboHop. Like. Because OG RoboHop and and its New England counterpart are very much not the same.
Correct. They distinguish between the New England counterparts for both Octopus and RoboHop, right? Like they actually say that this is the New England version. Because I remember going to purchase the new. I bought it in a growler before they even had it in cans. A few years ago when we had Troy on the pod, and they had, it was either Octopus or RoboHop. I swear it was RoboHop.
It was probably RoboHop. Like that one, they've done more regularly in New England. It's like I don't actually remember the last time they released the OG RoboHop. They have done one-off New England versions of Octopus, but it's not it's not as frequent, and that's a brewery only one. The New England version of RoboHop became even an LCBO release for a while.
Shit.
And with all due respect to Great Lakes, I love Great Lakes, but New England RoboHop is not as good as the OG. It's really, really not. It doesn't translate in my mind. You did not need to fuck with RoboHop. Like you could have just go ahead, make another New England double. Make it a completely different beer. You didn't need to fuck with RoboHop. RoboHop was an excellent double West Coast. You didn't need to be fucked with.
That's a fair point, and I can get down with that. It'd probably be better instead of I must applaud the creativity though, because I remember when I did see that whichever beer, maybe it was Octopus and not RoboHop then, whichever one it was. I remember getting that in the growler and I was like, yo, this is sick, because I remember Octopus is such a fantastic beer that having a New England version was like, yo, this is fun. I mean, this was like 3 years ago, probably, at the very least, 3, maybe 4. And it was a different time, obviously. But
sure. And look, I'm down with the idea for sure. I'm not opposed to the idea, but as a New England IPA, the New England RoboHop I didn't think it was very good, to be honest. And again, much love to Great Lakes. They've done lots of haze that I have liked, but the New England RoboHop was not one of them.
Respect. I don't recall, but yeah, you're right. I mean, look, not everyone hits it, and they're more, being around 30 plus years. They're an OG brewery here in Ontario, and not everything slaps, but their West Coast really did move the needle back, in the mid.
It really did. It really did. And RoboHop is a spectacular double West Coast.
Yes.
Octopus Wants to Fight is a spectacular single West Coast.
Yes. So it's it's something that you can typically find around town as well pretty easily, which is great. And also find in many LCBOs, so it's another great one that needs to be mentioned alongside all the gems in Ontario that we are mentioning. This is kind of cool, bro, because I feel like whenever you think, what's West Coast in Ontario that you can get easy, or in either province, and it's like you rack your brain a little bit, like, fuck, what can I get? So hopefully everyone who's watching and listening, like, take notes, man. Like, these are some beers that we
There's
would
good options
highly,
there. There really, really are.
yeah. What?
And when well, you know what? I was in the LCBO just today to grab this can of Lone Pine for tonight, and noticed a couple of other ones there too.
Please.
Left Field has, I think it's called West Coast Swing. I might be getting the name slightly wrong.
I'll check on
It's
Untappd.
it's West Coast something. I think it's West Coast Swing. But yeah, but that's available in the LCBO. Uh, like I'm a big fan of of Muskoka Mad Tom and
Yes.
and Twice as Mad Tom. Those are again year-rounder West Coast IPAs, easily available in Ontario at any time. We've got a lot of easily available West Coast IPAs here. We're really, really lucky.
Very cool, and you are correct. It is West Coast Swing. Do you know what that refer? My guess is that's. Oh no, they got baseball referring to. So
It's it's all baseball
it's all
references.
baseball.
And I'm not well versed in it, so I couldn't tell you.
All I was going to tell you was from. Do you remember Boys to Men's first single was called Motown Philly, and they in the chorus it says East Coast Swing. So I thought it was to do with that, but I'm a music person, not a sports person. But that's sick. I've never had this beer, and they've got like 1,000 check-ins on this fucking beer, so that's great. That means they're killing the game with that. But yeah, man, I feel like it's almost like I was gonna say like a well hidden secret, or no, sorry, like a shittily hidden secret or whatever. Like it's around, and maybe we don't talk about it as much as perhaps it should be spoken about. As far as I don't know, the volume of just fantastic West Coast IPAs, they don't really get the shine that they should do, and that was the point of this podcast, was for us to sort of like put some shine on both Ontario and Quebec and the different IPAs. Cool, the ones that we drank, absolutely, but also the other ones that are available for you. If you don't even have to dig, you can go to your LCBO and find. I bet there's a bunch that we forgot about, and then maybe there are some that are specific regionally into different areas that you find. And in Quebec, same thing. Different dépanneurs, different specialty stores that you be able to find stuff. You just gotta ask and see what's popping. And maybe there might be like some shit from Ma Brasserie out there, or fucking whatever. I think Godspeed does some stuff here.
Yep. Or even or even Dominion City's year-round stuff. Like Two Flags is a great
fire.
West Coast. Yeah.
Fuck,
yeah.
that should have been one that we might have done. Like that should have been.
Yeah,
probably
really.
I love that beer. That is like phenomenal.
What are we like? Yeah, what are we thinking? There's so many that like, fuck, we should have done that one. And like River Hymnal is one that they regularly put out, which is excellent.
See, like it's
so many good West Coast.
There's so many good West Coast IPAs in both provinces.
Oh, and like Tooth and Nail, Rabble Rouser, or Sucker Punch, both spectacular beers.
There you go. And one of the most, like you said, traditionally brewed, but like fine-tuned breweries in the entire country that Manny does not fuck around and takes that shit serious. So if you really want exceptional, true to style stuff, like that's where you need to go. Like getting when I came to see you in end of September, when we went to Saint-Guillaume, and I went past Tooth and Nail specifically to get their anniversary Vim and Vigor. Gonna have to make a habit of that. Like, thank God, I'm in Ontario now and they ship. And I also know Matthew, so I'm sure he'd be down too. But just phenomenal brewery that do these styles that, there's so many options to get into West Coast IPAs. We did 4 different ones tonight, and we talked about so many others. I imagine if you combine them all, they would be all so different. So there's essentially something for every taste as far as West. And this is just 2 provinces in the entire country, not including if you cross the border. We didn't even really touch on that too much, aside from the articles that had some of the legendary ones. You can get Sierra Nevada's Pale Ale at almost any LCBO.
Yeah, man.
So you'd be kind of crazy not to do it. And with that, Uncle Nathaniel, I feel like we're at 2 hours. I feel like we've done better than we thought. I didn't think it would be this long.
Yep. Well, Go figure. Like literally, I feel like every time we say like this time we're only going to be like 60 to 90 minutes. I feel like it literally never ends up being that way. We just end up talking every time.
Every time, and there's always something to talk about, and it's because we have so much phenomenal beer here in Canada and here in Ontario and Quebec.
Yeah.
It's with like honestly, I know you are too. I'm very grateful for it. I don't take it for granted. Particularly
We're so lucky.
We're so lucky, man. Particularly the last couple of years, the vast majority of people weren't able to travel. Previous to that, there was a time I wasn't able to travel due to immigration, so I'm very familiar with that. I'm still waiting for my fucking passport, which I don't get for another month or so. You know, so it's like I haven't felt that we've had less than. I haven't felt restricted in any shape or form.
Yeah.
And we're very fortunate to be in the part of the world that we are with such phenomenal world-class beer. And I think most people would agree at this point. And I think if Americans and other people from around the world tried what Canada has to offer, particularly Ontario and Quebec, they would lose their collective shit. And rightfully so, you know what I'm saying?
Yep, I'd say so.
Nathaniel, this is a pleasure. If anyone has any thoughts of other episodes, I want to keep this going. I want to keep doing other episodes together where we maybe focus on a style or something specific, like we had Oktoberfest. Now we had
that'd be great.
West Coast. You know, you and I are passionate about a bunch of things. My guess is probably the next one might be some sort of crispy episode because that's how we get down. Maybe we could do some stout episodes or barrel aged something. You know, keep this going. If anyone has any thoughts or requests, let us know.
Maybe we can get Noah on to do a barley wine episode at some point.
That would be genuinely fantastic. Jesus Christ, we would be vomiting, but we'd have to put some stoppers in those things, or you know.
We'll have to figure out a way to make it not ridiculous. But I'm sure we can think of something.
There's got to be a way. There has to be a way. So, guys, make sure you check out all the... Oh, yeah, let's get the thumbnail. Look at this. See? This is why Nathaniel is just an exceptional partner in all these things. Which, are you going to get all four? Oh, you're a god.
I'm going to get all four.
Okay, I'm going to see if I can get two here with the one hand that I have available to me. Okay, ready? Oh, that is stunning. Nathaniel, where can everyone find you and your glorious, glorious beard online?
All right, so everywhere online, it's at NathanDoesBeer, and I've not blogged in a little while because I'm living that new dad life. But any of the blogs that I have written over the past few years, you can find on the BAOS podcast blog or quick link NathanDoesBeer.com. And you can now find me here more regularly co-hosting BAOS podcast.
Yes, as often as possible. You already know I love it. This is just fun. If it's me and you, if it's me, you, and a guest, I love it. You're welcome anytime. This is your podcast. We are a squad. I appreciate you. Thank you for this, man. Like, it's really, really cool falling in love with a style with a friend and, like, really losing our collective shit over it. And it just makes it, like, not so, like, if it's just me? Like, is it just me who love this shit? Like, I can text you, like, bro, this is fun. And you're, like, drinking it probably more than I am. And it's very cool to be able to explore it in this much detail. So I hope everybody got something out of that tonight. So, man, thank you for just loving fire beer. I appreciate you, bro.
Oh, dude, I'm happy to be here. This is this is pure joy right here.
Isn't it? Oh, I'm... Normally what I would do after a podcast, I could usually finish them, or like sometimes if they do too warm, you just dash that and crack something else. I can't imagine cracking anything else tonight. I'm just going to do what I can to finish these without ruining tomorrow as such.
Exactly.
But everybody, thank you so much for watching and listening. If you enjoyed the episode, smash the thumbs up, hit subscribe below, hit the notification bell, Nathaniel.
Ding.
So you know when the new video drops. Follow us everywhere at BAOS Podcast. We go live with new pods every Wednesday, 8 p.m. Eastern. Of course, the link-up episodes, they're kind of sporadic depending on when we record them right now. Also, thank you again to Manscaped for sponsoring the podcast. Make sure you use the code BAOS, 20% off, free shipping at manscaped.com. We will see you guys in the next episode. Peace.
Cheers.